So we'll get started with some introductions here. First, let me introduce Councilmember Jones. Councilmember Jones, thank you for joining us. Appreciate you coming. And then also, Stephen, if you'd like to introduce folks to the mic.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. My name is Stephen Parker. I'm the fire marshal at Arvada Fire. And with us tonight, we have Chief Deanna Harrington. She oversees our community risk reduction section. And then Jillian Moore, she's one of our community risk reduction specialists. Also in the back here, about in the center, we have firefighter Tracy Leyden out of our Station 8. And then Chris Warren, who's one of our fire prevention specialists. Fire reviews, inspections, and fire investigations.
Thank you so much.
There's one more. We have one of our district board members, Ted Terranova, sitting next to Chief Harrington.
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate that. We also have Councilmember Smith in the back of the room. Yes, hello. And one of our county representatives as well, Lisa Leslie Beltmeyer. Welcome to the meeting. So we'll get started, and from our consultant team, Dave is with me here. We're going to go through a brief presentation. If you don't mind pulling up the agenda here, we'll get started with some introductions, including from Leyden Rock Metro District.
Good evening, and thank you all for coming tonight. My name is Brett Vernon. I'm one of the board members for the Leyden Rock Metropolitan District. Chris Woodley and I have been driving on this for a long time, and we're very grateful that you're here. I wanted to share with you the presentation that I made to the Arvada City Council on September 19, 2022. I apologize if you read this, I don't know that's all. Mr. Mayor and council members, I'm here on behalf of the Leyden Rock Metropolitan District to formally request a partnership with the City of Arvada to explore the design and construction of emergency exits out of Leyden Rock. This request was authorized in the Metro District Board meeting earlier this month. Our requests for alternative routes out of Leyden Rock are driven by the speed and destructiveness of the Marshall Fire, the increasing frequency and intensity of high wind events, our proximity to likely ignition sources, such as the landfill, railroad, Highway 93, the heavy industrial area along Highway 72, and high tension power lines running through the neighborhood. The proven inability of 82nd Avenue to handle a large volume of traffic. 82nd becomes completely gridlocked when Route 93 is closed due to a fire or an accident. Residents have seen this and envision alternative routes out of the neighborhood, either across the railroad tracks, through Patrick's Park, or across Arvada Gulch. Unfortunately, all of these routes have hidden obstacles which will strand those vehicles. Drainage swales on both sides of the railroad tracks, and creeks in both Arvada Gulch and Patrick's Park, which will handle any normal car. Maximum lane capacity for a two-lane road is 2,200 cars per hour. Leyden Rock neighborhood has 1,440 homes, which means it equates to roughly 2,500 vehicles. Current plan for Arvada PD calls for Arvada PD to block the intersections at 82nd and Indiana, 82nd and Quaker, to accelerate our way out of the neighborhood. However, during Marshall Fire, the Broomfield PD was completely understaffed and didn't have the personnel to be able to do that. They were going door to door saving lives, kicking people out of their homes that didn't get proper notification. It took some residents to flee the Marshall Fire 90 minutes to go a mile. That would be disastrous for us. First responders coming into Leyden Rock will need to use the westbound lane of 82nd Avenue, so Arvada PD cannot reverse traffic flow onto the westbound lane to expedite our expedition. We're stuck in one lane. 82nd has no shoulders. Anyone who's driven on it knows that one crash would block the entire road and stranded everyone at once. We've identified 4, now 5, possible evacuation routes based on the likely ignition sources. 2 to the west, 1 to the south, 1 to the northeast, and 1 to the due east. The aggregate cost of all of these routes is estimated to be $915,000. The Leyden Metro District Board is in the unique position to be able to participate in funding a portion of these costs, subject to board approval. But the cost should not be borne solely by the Metropolitan District. The residents of Leyden will take responsibility for their own safety. After consulting with the fire, we budget for a doubling of the width of the mow bands behind our homes, doubling the frequency of which those fire safety bands are being mowed. And that's all going to be funded by resident property taxes. We're also proposing building fire breaks along the railroad tracks to try and mitigate fires which are started by the railroad. They've started to freeze so far. The proposed emergency exits will not only benefit residents of Leyden, but also third parties in the area and residents of Spring Mason. The proposed exits would also benefit all Arvada's first responders by unplugging the only routes into the neighborhood. Lastly, Leyden residents make significant contributions to the city and should be afforded the city's same participation in funding as would be expected from residents not living in the metropolitan district. We understand the growth needs to pay for itself, but residents of Leyden run businesses which employ fellow Arvadans. They shop in Arvada stores, they eat in Arvada's restaurants. We pay taxes to the city of Arvada at the same rate as all other residents. So that was my presentation to the city, basically outlining what we need to do here. And tonight's meeting and the following 3 meetings are in response to that request. Your participation is vital. Part of that is going to be public comment that's going to come towards the end of this presentation. I encourage anyone who wants to have a comment to please do so, but I've got a few asks for you. One is please be respectful of the presenters, the process that we have here, our city and staff, city and study employees. They're all here working overnight here, so let's be respectful. Let's also try to consider what they're presenting here tonight as we're writing our comments for the presenters. And let's also try to keep our comments clear and concise. At some point, we're going to start repeating ourselves. And some of that's fine, but at some point, when we told people 8 times, we're not going to be able to get out. We just need to affirm that we agree with the fellow presenters, and we agree with the Metro District. So let's try to be respectful of time and be respectful of each other. I also want to introduce Leslie Dellenkamper with Jefferson County. She's got a couple of comments she'd like to make. Can you take a couple minutes?
I was going to say,
Can you turn up the mic, please?
We're having trouble hearing you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I have to first tell you, I am awe-inspired by the turnout tonight. We were doing a little counting. We have nearly 200 people here this evening, which is a real testament to you in this community. Absolutely. And the care that you have for your family and for your neighbors and for keeping everyone safe. I'm Jefferson County Commissioner Leslie Dellenkamper. I serve on the Board of County Commissioners with Commissioner Kraft-Tharp and Commissioner Kerr. I was appointed to the Colorado Fire Commission by the governor, and I also chair JEFCO's Wildfire Task Force. I brought with me a handout. We may not have enough, but we can get more to you. That talks a little bit about the county's role, and I'll be very brief because I know you have a number of great speakers to get to today. But if there's one key message I can share with you, as we think about Jefferson County being #1 in the state for wildfire risk, especially the potential loss of property, we know that there's no one strategy, there's no one silver bullet that will help us reduce wildfire risk. It really is a multi-strategy approach. We've been working on those issues at a state level and also a county level. We do this work arm in arm with our fire chiefs, our first responders, our sheriff, our legislators, our city council members. with our community, all of us coming together. Everything from hardening homes. So for example, Jefferson County passed codes and regulations that if you live in what's called the wildland urban interface, areas like Evergreen, Conifer, and now we're looking more closely at areas like yours, grassland areas, as we saw with the Marshall Fire. We are encouraging and actually requiring the WUI 6,700 feet elevation and above, that if you're going to replace your deck, or your roof, or you've got a new build, that you use fire ignition resistant materials, because FEMA tells us that is one of the top, if not #1 effective strategies to helping reduce wildfire risk. Defensible space around your home, clearing vegetation, and more. That's why Jefferson County has doubled our slash collection efforts. Our community has responded, and last year alone, we saw the highest numbers ever of slash collection. And again, that's because of you and our community members coming together to say, we know that this is important. We worked very closely with Senator Cutter to implement a statewide WUI minimum code board, the Wildland Urban Interface Code Board. So when we do pass, as we have done, WUI code board codes here in Jefferson County, we see that across the state, because we're only as good as our next door neighbors in Gilpin or Clear Creek in terms of keeping our community safe. There's more we're doing in terms of mitigation, because we know modeling shows us that as you have the right conditions, you have a fire coming from Evergreen Conifer area moving east, it can easily jump C-470 into Lakewood. And I know there are very similar concerns here in Arvada. We saw Marshall Fire jump Highway 36. I'm going to just close by saying the county is a partner with you, with our first responders, with the City of Arvada, with those of you who are leaders in our community. We thank you for your partnership, because we can't do this alone. Thanks so much for the opportunity to talk, and we're here if you need anything at all. Thank you.
All right, and I just wanted to mention that we've got folks also from the City of Arvada. Our city manager is here, Lori Gillis, as well as our deputy city managers are here with us, and the deputy police chief. I'm going to kind of just breeze through things. We do want to keep up with the agenda here, so with that, next slide. So yes, our goals here tonight is to basically share some information about our process related to the study, and essentially share with you what we're going through as a team, working with the Metro District, working with Arvada Fire, working together with different departments and divisions within the City of Arvada. The City of Arvada does have a lot of activity in the background. There are several activities that have been ongoing in relation to the study that we're currently working on, and just happening in the background. I just want to quickly go over. So for example, we have mowing and maintenance activity through our public works, parks, and Arvada Fire departments, working together on the fire break that you just heard about, by reviewing, maintaining, and mowing grasses in key locations. We also have regional transportation projects that we're coordinating on, for example, with CDOT. Indiana is State Highway 72, Bull Creek Parkway, State Highway 72, Highway 93 is a CDOT facility. These are all CDOT. So we're working with our partners on that front as well. And we also have a transition system plan project that is evaluating the congestion levels citywide. So everything's connected, and we want to make sure that everything is able to flow together. Another aspect of what we do is neighborhood and redevelopment projects and reviews. So as you heard, we do have, for example, a fire review as part of the redevelopment process, and the same goes for traffic review and in terms of building reviews and codes. So we go through our standards and codes and do extensive reviews that take sometimes 18 months, 2 years to go through a review process for any subdivision that we go through. There's extensive effort and a lot of staff hours put into that at the professional level. And then our partners, our fire department, have upcoming community meetings, and they're doing outreach related to their trainings on personal property as well as community level protection. So there are activities happening in the background. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of this. This particular study that we're going through is going through its own process, incorporating what we have from that end, as well as coordinating with what's happening also at the county level as well. So, the project is basically going to have a number of deliverables, and I'm going to have our consultants from Stantec, they're experts in this area, help go through what we're going to deliver as part of the study process.
Thank you, John. Hopefully you all can hear me. Anyways, let's see here. The study that we're working on, this is really what we're doing right now today, a continuation of the survey. Just trying to get some more input from you, the neighbors, the citizens in the Leyden neighborhood area. And I really can't point to the screen. I'm used to being able to do that, but unfortunately, these are the 4 main tasks that we're doing, and the bottom 2 are really the important parts. Those are the deliverables that we will hand over to the city as part of the study. The identification, and this is a big one, and you'll see why it is here in a little bit, but the identification of infrastructure areas of improvement. We've already heard several comments about 82nd being gridlocked at times and just getting out of the neighborhood. And then also reviews and coordination with recommendations of communication, coordination, and evacuation plans. We're reviewing the evacuation plans and other emergency management plans in the county with the city and the other agencies that are involved. The study area, Leyden Rock neighborhood area, the metropolitan district, bounded by the 4 major facilities that you all know. That is our study area. We're looking at the capacity of the roadways in there, the capacity of the intersections, during an emergency, what are the different routes, obviously with fires and some of the activities that come from different directions, but predominantly from the west and the northwest. So we are doing some analysis with that and just really concentrating on this area. The schedule of this, we are planning to be done by the end of September. That red dot star is where we are today. So you can see we do have quite a few other areas to continue working on throughout the summer. And a couple other meetings. We don't have dates for those meetings, but those are the general time frames, mid to late July, and hopefully by the late August for the third and final. So, you all, or actually, hopefully all of you, took a survey, and we got 454 responses. We had 1,100 essay, when you could say, if you checked other, what do you want to say about it, or if you had comments for the city. Notably, one of you wrote a 2-page essay. And when it comes back from the survey, it's 1 paragraph. So we are still looking through all these comments, but good on you. A lot of interest and a lot of input. But these are the 3 predominant areas: emergency access, emergency notification, of course, and then testing the system and evacuation. How is this all going to work? 3 of the prominent responses are on the screen. Number 1 concern, wildfire, high winds. Those 2 can go hand in hand. They can be individual or separate. Down power lines is pretty high up there. The second one, existing roadway network. Yeah, 80% is the biggest concern. So, and we'll look a little bit more into some of the other details. But one of the interesting things I saw here, and you can see it on the screen, is for the preparedness of your own individual emergency preparedness. Only 1/3 of the respondents said that yes, they are prepared. 1/3. And I was a little surprised with that. But, and that's why we have fire department here. And again, they brought some go bags to help out with that preparedness. So in anyways, obviously we had about 10 questions that you responded to. And like I said, we have a lot of responses to still go through and analyze and kind of put them together and see where they apply. Evacuation routes and opportunities for them. There are 5 today out of the neighborhood. I'm not talking about further outside of the neighborhood. The 4 predominant accesses into the neighborhood, as well as 1 emergency-only access on the east side. And then there's an additional 7 so far that have been identified for options. We're under consideration. We're looking at those, seeing what the options are. And I will say for the railroad, crossing the railroad tracks, I did reach out to, we have a railroad expert in our company. I did reach out to him today, but unfortunately he was on vacation. So I couldn't find out some options for dealing with the EP. But we will continue that conversation internally and bring what we can do. So this is just a map outlining or summarizing, but of that previous table. We have the same map over here on the wall for people to look at if you'd rather. Again, west, south, and east, and then just one point maybe on the north, if that can be better situated or whatever. The points for that is not a specific location, it's just the identification of crossing railroad tracks. So, that's it. Let's see what we did on the I think we did pretty good. 6 points over, I think that's right.
Thanks, all you. I appreciate you breezing through this. So yes, obviously we're here to have a discussion, and this is again an extension of our survey effort. We are listening. We are trying to understand from your experience, what are you seeing and what opportunities should we evaluate as part of the process that we're going through. As Dave pointed out, we do have a pretty quick timeline, so by the end of August, we'd like to have essentially our meetings completed and our analysis completed. So we will come back to you between now and then and share with you what we are analyzing and going through as we go through this process. But today, here, what we'd like to do is open it up for any kind of discussion. We have team members on hand that could help us with any kind of particular questions, and I'll pass around the mic to you all. Again, one more time, I'd like to reiterate what Brett mentioned. If you have a comment that's similar to someone else's comment, just to keep the meeting organized and concise, please agree with the previous comment, and that way we can get to more comments as part of the process. Did you want to kick us off?
Hey everybody, I'm Chris Woodley. Many of you might have seen my video that I did. I've been working with Brett on this for some time. First of all, this is awesome. Thank you so much for showing up. We had no idea if we'd had 10 people. So packing the house is what we wanted to do, and this is what we've done. My biggest request of everybody is stay engaged. As I said, we're going to have multiple meetings. Please try to attend all the meetings you can. Talk to your neighbors. It amazes me as I walk through Leyden that I'll speak to people and they don't even think about any emergency preparedness, how we're going to get out. I guess that's human nature, to not think about things until it's right in front of you, but what got me initially started on this process with Brett was the campfire in Paradise, California in 2018. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but it wiped out a ton of homes, even more than the Marshall Fire. Killed 85 people, a good number of those folks in their cars evacuating. So, and they share some of the geography that we do, one road in, one road out. What I want to do is I want to be respectful and give everybody a chance to speak, so I'm just going to kick us off with another comment. I think this is a great start, and I really thank the city, county, and all the other teams that are working on this and taking us seriously. I really appreciate that. The one thing I haven't seen yet, and I'm just going to put it in there, I don't know if people at the city are taking notes. I'm recording this meeting as well, so I plan to post this later for folks who couldn't make it. But the one thing I'm concerned with, besides the egress routes, that's number one. But number two, and you hit it, John, is we're not prepared as a community, even if we have those egress routes. So one of the things I'm hoping that we talk about in future meetings is a community-wide plan, maybe even drills. I mentioned Paradise, California. If you guys are bored and you want to go on the internet, pull up their website. They, as a community, as you might imagine, have done a ton since that fire. They're now in recovery mode. Things they're implementing, they do drills. They've got emergency sirens going in. In fact, they're testing them on June 15th. I have a message into the community director. I want to talk to them about how they came to that idea and how they implemented it, because I think that we need something like that here. I'll just close by saying, the other thing that keeps me up at night is, the worst case scenario for me, not to be a fearmonger, but is I imagine one of our highway events, Somebody on Highway 93 flicks a cigarette out. It picks it up, it blows towards us, and it's the middle of the night. And the one concern I have, and there's been news stories about this, you may have seen your own evidence of this, we have all these apps now because so many of us don't have landlines, so we don't get into reverse 911. So we're relying on these apps. The county, Jeffcom, has changed apps I don't know how many times. I don't even know which app we're on. I think it's Smart 911, but I don't know. And there's concern of, even if you're registered, are you registered with the correct app? Are you going to get the emergency notification? So one of my big things that I'm going to talk about down the road are the sirens. Minimally, I want something in the community so that even if you don't get an emergency notification on your phone, you're going to hear some noise and say, oh, something's going on. I need to figure it out. So with that, I appreciate it again. Thank you so much for coming out. Please do stay engaged. Talk to your neighbors. That's the best thing we can do right now.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. All right, let's start with some comments. Anybody would like to share anything that's...
I'm Ron Hill. Boy, what a crowd. Bless everybody. It's back to gym like this. I just wanted to share with the city and emergency responders an event that I noticed in our last fire that I personally was involved with. This was the one near the railroad tracks, sort of spreading down the path of houses where Christian, are you there? Well, near one of our board directors' houses, one of our residents actually found this bobcat and helped the fire department put out the fire. That's how desperate the situation became. I saw the fire start from my backyard, literally. I went out and got in my car, picked up a neighbor on the way out the block, to see how bad the fire was, see if I need to spread the word, as I have done previously, in previous fires next door, having seen the fire. My neighbor and I got about 50 yards in my car on Leyden Drive, which is one of the major exit routes out of that community. Fire had just started. I had 2 or 3 minutes in the car driving to see how bad it was with the neighbor, and that's all I got. That's how quickly, how completely the main access road there to the interior of Leyden Drive, Leyden Drive filled up. So we cannot get out right now. There's an emergency with any conditions yet. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's...
Hi. I actually have a question more than a comment. I think you know our concerns. So in this Stantec study that you're doing, I know you mentioned you're looking within the parameters that are up there. How are you taking into account incremental volume increase of homes and businesses that are coming in to the routes that are currently available today? Is that part of the impact and feasibility study? And then secondly, how are you looking at the incremental risk? Possibly, I'm not saying this is it, so please don't take it negatively, of the height of the landfill and the increased amount of issues we've been seeing. You know, that's just natural, quite frankly, Kendall. I just want to understand if your study's taking into account the future growth, or is it an as-if study as of today?
Well, it's a really good question. We are predominantly looking at the existing conditions, keeping in mind that evacuation is, we're not as much concerned about the background traffic, because during an evacuation, roads can be shut down. And that's part of why we're not just looking at the infrastructure in and of itself, but we're also looking at coordination with these other plans and making some recommendations on those plans on how to do that. I have unfortunately had to evacuate. I used to be the city traffic engineer in Colorado Springs, and I did have to evacuate the northwest corner during the Waldo Canyon fire. And we were able to shut down the freeway, literally shut down the freeway and shut down some of the roads. They only had 2 roads leading out of that neighborhood. There's 40,000 people that we evacuated. So, but I also had to be able to get emergency vehicles in there, and that's the things that we're looking at. So it's not so much people going to 7-Eleven or the businesses that we're really concerned with, because those roads, quite frankly, are going to get shut down. Did that answer? And we're not looking at, I'm not looking at the physical part of the landfill, and that type of thing. So,
My question is not so much, I just wanted to make sure that population growth and volume is being considered on the feasibility of how many routes are necessary. That's really where my question was going.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I'll just mention that we do have a couple other studies that are parallel to this effort. The transportation system plan is looking at the larger scale arterial traffic and growth of the city. The city does have a 20-year outlook plan. It's called the comprehensive plan. It brings together land use and transportation. And this particular information is something that we update with census data, with new demographic data every 10 years. So we're going to go through that process here again very soon because there's new census data. But the current information data that we have does speak to land development and infrastructure, transportation infrastructure specifically. We will be considering that as part of the study, as the background information that Dave mentioned. As part of our efforts too, I should mention that we are listening. So if you do have a question or issue with a landfill, neighbor, whatever, that an area that is a question, we are interested in finding out what that is. So we appreciate you sharing that. And we do have comment cards. If you want to provide more specifics, you can add that and drop it off in the back or in our surveys and share it with us. We appreciate that. Hi.
Thank you. I'm Judy Newton. And we took advantage of the fire department's program to look at, this is a hard and home question, to look at, just evaluate our home and see what we could do to make it safer. And one of the things that I understood from that is that most of the homes in Marshall Fire burn because of ventilation systems in the attic that would suck embers in. So those homes actually burn from the roof and from the inside out.
Speak up, please.
Sorry. So those homes burn from the roof, ventilation system sucking embers in, and burn from the inside out. So the fix for that, my understanding was, is to try to put, I might get this wrong, but it was like 1/8-inch galvanized wire behind your vent. And we actually had a contractor come out to look at it. And he said, that'd be expensive, I'll get back to you. We never did, never answered another phone call. So if that is a fix, is that something that can be developed as an option for homeowners?
Let me get the appropriate person here maybe to help with that. 1 second.
All right, so specific to the attic vents that you see in the sockets around your house, that is one of the mitigation techniques that can keep embers from going up into your attic space. Unfortunately, I can't really help out with the contractor aspect, but one thing that we are looking at is through our process of evaluating the wildfire problem within our fire protection district, is to hopefully identify some grant funding that we can partner with the city, with HOAs, and hopefully provide more of a volume to where it's a little more appealing for a contractor to come out instead of just doing one house. But that is correct. There is attic vent covers that you replace your current vents with that will limit the ability of members to get inside the attic space.
Thank you, Stephen. There's a question over here too.
My name is Scott Farmer, and I'm also on the Light Property Board. This kind of directed to the first initial meeting where you kind of presented this survey. It was much more broad regionally. It included Candelas, all the way down to where the rock place is. Has that been still in place, or is this in addition to, or is this substituting that?
Thank you, yeah. This is an extension of the survey. We're still in the information gathering phase of our project. It's why we want to make sure that we have all the input we possibly can and provide as much opportunity for inputs and feedback. We are processing the the survey results, we had a couple of highlights here just to share with you where the preliminary results are at. We do plan to use this input as well as the survey input and any kind of comments that were provided in the comment section of the survey as part of the analysis process, along with our technical data and technical analysis that we're going to be doing.
I have one more question, Jeff. Did you say that people wrote a two-page essay, you wrote out one paragraph of it? Is that all?
No, well, that's probably what I said. But what I meant was it was a 2-page essay, but when it comes out of the survey, it's one long paragraph. It's not several different paragraphs, so it's all one paragraph. Luckily, it's not one sentence.
Yes, I think there's one map.
Hi. My name is Lauren. I live up by the train tracks. This kind of goes off what you were saying. I'm not sure who this question is for, but when the fires happened last summer, we had the police come knocking on our doors, see if we had any video footage. And they made it seem like there would be like a police investigation into the railroad. And I wanted to see if anything came of that, if the railroad would be responsible to, come up with any solutions for the fires coming out of the mountains. So I don't know if anyone has that information.
Don, is that something, or Steve?
Yeah, so specific to that particular fire, we send out on every fire investigators to try and determine the cause. And when we go door to door trying to look for video footage, whether it's ring cameras or any perimeter cameras that you may have around your house, that just helps us figure out or eliminate what may have happened. So because nobody witnessed the fire starting, any video can help us determine what happened. In that particular case, it was determined that the train did start that fire. As far as liability goes, that would have to go through a most likely civil process that we aren't necessarily involved with. But to some degree, anybody that starts a fire can be held accountable.
Glad to stand up, I guess. John Sandoval is my name, I'm the deliverer. That last slide that was up there, was the Jefferson Parkway right-of-way part of that evacuation plan?
Should be.
So the parkway has right-of-way that's reserved, and it's shown in our maps. But in terms of the access points, we are showing what's existing, the 5 access points in and out of Leyden Ranch and Leyden Rock subdivisions. And there are 7 more recommendations that we've received through the comments so far, for 12 total. None so far have referred to the Jefferson Parkway at this time. Does that help? Yes.
Can you add that to the comment section, please?
Ask the Jefferson Parkway.
Can you add his comment to the comment section so that for the record,
Yes.
the parkway should be considered?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And then find out if Candelas is being evacuated there.
As part of the analysis. Here, I
That is part of the analysis because it shows 70 seconds. So I assume he's coming from the north. All those communities are coming.
We can't hear you.
No. Sorry. I said it looked like 72nd was the limit of the scope, and I wondered if Candelas and the other communities would also be evacuating on those routes. So I hope we share that.
Yeah, thank you. So our focus is Leyden Ranch and Leyden Rock subdivisions and the surrounding areas. As part of the process that we're going through, the built-out conditions of the roadways is part of what we're looking at with the consultants and studying. The way the regional traffic and the neighborhood traffic interact, that's part of the analysis.
Just real quick, would it be possible in the future or by email or something to get a copy of what the current fire response plan is? Because as it was mentioned earlier, we had a car wreck and they detoured everything down to 82nd, and within literally 5 minutes you couldn't get in or out. So I'd love to just understand what the current response plans are for the area, just so we can be better educated. Like if you need to be on Indiana and we all have to go the opposite way, can we start educating the community and how we can get that information easily and in an educated forum?
Thank you.
Yeah, so we do have established response plans for general call types. And all of that's on our website. So we're an accredited department, internationally accredited, and we have to establish our response plans for wildfire, hazmat, structure fires, EMS, everything that we do, we establish what our response plans are. So that is the minimum number of resources that we're going to send to any given event and severity. But as far as identifying how we're getting apparatus into a specific incident, really varies by the minute. Because if we have, let's keep in mind the Leyden community, we have Station 7 off of 80th, Station 9 up in Candelas, and then Station 8 down off of Quaker. If they're out on a call, we're pulling resources from other areas of the city. And if we don't have additional resources, we'll pull them in from other fire departments. So it's really difficult to predict on any given situation where we're going to be coming from. We do have the established response minimums that we do for variable types.
I think she's talking about
Thank you.
evacuation plan, use currently for Leyden Rock.
Well, evacuation planning and actual evacuation isn't necessarily done by the fire department. As has been mentioned, it's going to be done by the police department and if the sheriff is around, because we're going in to try and mitigate the problem. Not necessarily that every single resource wouldn't be available to help with evacuation, but that's primarily a law enforcement function, is setting up the evacuation. We work together in a command function to figure out who needs to be evacuated. So depending on the situation, maybe the entire area wouldn't need to be evacuated. So there's the pre-evacuation, defend in place, and evacuate. So if you get any of those, pay attention to what it's telling you to do, as opposed to just automatically evacuating. But we coordinate and work with the police department to figure those out. And those are sent out through the apps, some kind of alert, and it'll tell you what areas are going to be closed and which way to go.
Appreciate it. Next question in the back.
Hi. So there's only 4 exits to Second. There's only 4 exits to Second Street, not 5. And I'm one of the people who live right next to the train tracks when the fire happened. And I'm just thinking, what could be a preventative measure that we can add so that maybe just sparks flying off the wheels will decrease the chance of fire happening again for now.
It's happened.
Yes.
What was the question?
Yeah, so the question was related to the number of access points that I mentioned earlier, as well as what can be done to help with, in a preventative manner, to help with fire issues related to the railroad tracks.
The first one was just a statement, the preventative measure is really your question.
Yeah. So Leyden has 4 formal access routes. You're totally correct on that. There is an emergency one planned off of a cul-de-sac on the eastern end at Moss Circle. So yeah, we have a couple of maps if you'd like to take a look and to see where those are located. We've highlighted them, as well as locations where folks have proposed additional access points. In response to the question related to the mitigation measures, I just want to mention earlier, I did note that there are several teams, Arvada Fire, Parks and Public Works, that are actively doing mowing and maintenance type work in the area to provide a fire break. And I don't know if any team members want to add any information related to this.
Hi. Some of you folks might know me. I've been here maybe quite a bit. Tracy Leyden, I'm one of the field mitigation specialists along with the district. And so part of our education process is going out to your community. We do a lot of outreach. Again, it depends on how many folks show up here. But again, one of the things that we have worked with Ben Smith, who's your former district manager with your property, was we worked with Light Rock, getting low bands, that you guys have probably seen in your open space areas, anywhere between 10 to 20 feet. And so we had a fire last August, which was about 17 acres that we lost out there. Most of that fire actually burned itself out because of mitigation issues that were done by the HOA. They had gone and done these defensible spaces, we'll call it, and they actually had about 20 to 30 foot defensible space. So after the fire happened, the next day I went out and met with Ben and your landscaper. We proposed and they bumped that up to 100 feet. And they should be out there doing that again. Typically they start their mowing process right around June. And you can expect that out there again. I will be meeting with your new board members from the HOA very shortly, and also your district board members. The new district manager should be in place, I guess, this week maybe. Okay, but I work with Christina and the gang in the office there, so we're ahead of the game here. So, but we do preventive measures, and that's a lot of that stuff that you've seen over the last 4 to 5 years. We've been adding on to that. We started with 10, now we're pushing it further and further out, so we don't have these issues. And as you saw that fire, if you did look close to the tracks or by that building there, fire actually burned itself out. It snuffed out with short grasses. Hopefully I can answer your question.
No, that does. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Eric Bistrup, I live on Ross, so I've seen a lot of the fires from the train tracks right off my back deck. Saw lightning hit and blow up a truck. And it seems like there's a power line that's just a magnet for fire right there. So the question is, when I watch the fire department respond, it's incredibly difficult for them to get down the gulch and back up to that side. They can't come in from 72 very easily either. So one of the questions is there a way to get better access to anything along the tracks? And a follow-up question about the mitigation. I was out behind my fence weed eating to try and get myself a little block. How much is enough? Because when they come low, you get 3 or 4 feet.
Yeah.
What's a good amount for our sake?
Okay, my suggestion, sir, is what we reach is 10 feet. That's the minimum requirement that we're requesting. And take a lawnmower out there, weed whacker, whatever you need to do.
Can't hear you. Aaron?
I'm sorry, guys, can you hear me now? So the minimum requirement we're asking, and this is voluntary, is 10 feet to push your fence line out. And most of the stuff is going to be voluntary with the community to get out there with your lawnmower, with weed whacker to get out there and get that area out there. Now, we're speaking to agriculture. We do have access. There's a 2-track that runs by the pump house up there that we're able to get down. I was actually on that fire. I was working the north face of that fire there. We're going to actually get down there, and a lot of wildland we do is usually with tools, and we're walking and we're working down there, and that's what we did that day. So we're able to knock that fire out within an hour. But again, it's one of those things. Yes, it is a little difficult to get in there, but it's working in the district out here on the west side of City of Arvada with our access points here.
Well, we appreciate you.
All right, thank you. And we are going to study any recommended routes, any kind of feedback, inputs related to access points as part of the process too. I just wanted to mention that as well. Was there a question over here?
So with talking about expanding on Indiana, there's that railroad bridge there. I would think that, in planning that out long term, obviously there's quite a bit of investment in elevating that track, but yeah, I don't know what the volume of trains are coming through there. I think that's part of that Amtrak route that runs through the mountains. And I think some of the fires have been caused by the track, the trains coming out of the mountains and having to slow down and having to brake more and stuff like that. I'm just wondering, can that be factored into the expansion of Indiana? And, obviously it's going to cost no matter what, but that would create the opportunity to build some egress routes and things with that maybe being helpful.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So related to that, we are working with CDOT, given that it's a state highway there, it's State Highway 72. And one of the things that we have initiated is actually a joint project to evaluate Indiana Street together in that particular segment, which is a pinch point for everyday traffic as well as part of the consideration here. So we are working with the state DOT, and it has been something that we've been working on in the background ourselves for quite some time, looking at planning, looking at our traffic analysis, looking at redevelopment plans and the impacts, and using that information to take a data-driven approach on what to do with the roadway system. So it's widening the overhead tracks and the bridge there is part of our long-range plan. And the question now is how do we work with the DOT to get that started? I also want to note that as part of the Transmission Advisory Committee, which is the citizen committee that meets once a month at the City of Arvada, they advise City Council on transmission issues. Indiana has come up as a priority, as well as West 72nd Avenue. The strategy that was discussed, and now you're seeing West 72nd Avenue widened, and Indiana being worked on to see that. This was the strategy that had been proposed at the time. So we're adhering to that process of widening where we can, looking at intersections along the corridor along Indiana Street, and tackling them one intersection at a time to widen the corridor and work with CDOT. Any question here? I'll come back to you.
Dennis Needvelt. I have a couple of questions. One, you're mentioning Highway 72. How can we get to that from our neighborhood? I don't see any way except 82nd to get out. Even with the proposals of going over the railroad crossing, that would still only leave us one, so expansion of 72 doesn't seem that viable. The second question is about the communication. Cellular service in the neighborhood is, abysmal. So you mentioned these apps to get notified, and if we're not in our home with Wi-Fi, the chance of us getting that notification is slim. I like the idea of putting in sirens, but how can we get better cell phone service in this neighborhood?
Yeah, I appreciate the comment. I think as part of what we're doing, we're looking at the big picture with regional traffic to move that, and then also with the local traffic to keep that moving. We have to have both that regional and local traffic working together to be able to operate the transportation system as a whole. But it is a good comment, and we will capture that. Related to cell phone coverage, did you want to maybe speak about any efforts? Yes.
So we have heard some comments about cellular service, and we have taken a look at the coverage maps of the three major carriers, Verizon, T-Mobile, CenturyLink. There's probably others. And there is saturated cover for the Leyden area, because you know your topography is challenging, and if you're in your homes, it can disrupt the signal, you know, that kind of thing. We actually asked for one of the Verizon reps to attend tonight so they could talk more about that, but they were unable to make it. One of the things that they did talk about was that they were actually wanting to put a cell tower in the Leyden area, but that was rejected. So if this is something that the community is interested in, I do think that Verizon would be interested in, we would see that with the community. But we probably at this next meeting that we have with you, we're going to try to get the cell phone reps here so that they can talk more specifically about their coverage.
PTA manager can go online.
Thank you.
If there's not coverage.
Yes.
You go to websites, cell towers, because there's not
So I think yes. Question, comment, back there? Sorry. There you go. Thank you.
I like hearing that there are plans or discussion at least to widen existing roads. Realistically, that is going to take years. And what I would like to see entered into this discussion are more short-term plans, goals, something to give us, because 5 years from now, 7, 8, 9 years from now may be way too far in the future. So can we put that into the discussion?
One second. Thank you, yes. So one thing I just want to note is that we are trying to figure out some short-term and long-term solutions as part of the process that we're going through. So definitely we understand that there's interest in getting things moving, and we will be working on that. So I really appreciate that.
One of my biggest challenges with the Marshall Fire was getting any information. And I would like to know exactly what app we should be on in Leyden Rock. Also, I have been on an app, and for the railroad fire, we weren't here, we were out of state, and I did get a notification, but it didn't tell me what was going on. It just said evacuate now. I had to call a neighbor to find out what was going on. There's not enough information.
Appreciate that. I see Deputy Chief here ready to maybe respond to that question.
And it's not that I want to respond right after the cellular discussion. However, my name's Todd Reeves. I'm the Deputy Chief at the Police Department, specifically over our operations area. And I've brought some information that I'll put on the back tables about the notification. And Chris was right, earlier it was brought up that there has been some changes. The good news is if you were signed up on the old notification system, that transferred over to the new one. But the current notification is the larger of the two cards. It's called Lookout Alert. And that will notify you of a lot of things. It goes beyond just wildfires. So if we have an incident in your neighborhood where we might be activating a tactical team or we're missing a child, we'll use Lookout Alert to communicate with all of you for that information. The second information, and it'll be the smaller of the two cards, is called Smart 911. Smart 911 is a system where you can go onto the platform and you can put in special information about your household. So if you have, even dogs that are in the house and require medications, you can do it with, if there's disabilities, if there's other issues that first responders should be aware of at the house. Jeff Com, who's our dispatch center, will have that information in that computer, and they can provide that information to the police or fire while we're responding. So again, just for clarification, Lookout is to get the notifications when the cellular works, and the Smart 911 is to pre-plan for first responders coming in. One of the things I will tell you is text messaging, especially if you activate your phone on Wi-Fi at home, is generally much more reliable, and you will get a text message as well. So I will leave these in the back of the room. There's a QR code to be scanned for the Lookout Alert, and that's the notifications. And then there's a process for the Smart 911, and there's more information if you go to JeffCom 911. Their website, it's right there on the front page of the different notification system that they have and the difference between the two.
Thank you for that. Yes. Brett.
Thank you. A couple quick points on our partnership with Nevada Fire. I'm so bad about this. A couple quick comments on our partnership with our Nevada Fire and Nevada PD. The Metro District has in the past held regular biannual meetings with the community and our Nevada Fire and Nevada PD to go through best practices, fire mitigation with Tracy's several times. And we are, those got behind some of our capital projects meetings, but we're reestablishing those meetings. And Christine just let me know that our next meeting is June 27th with our Nevada Fire in the clubhouse. So we can keep that going every 6 months. And we're going to establish the same meetings with Commander Kellogg of the Delta Center. Quick question for Nevada Fire. I have heard that the Moss Circle in emergency exit is for fire ingress only. It is not for resident evacuation. Is that correct, or are we going to be able to evacuate out of that exit? Or is that only fire department personnel in?
So the way that this roadway was developed for that specific emergency access was for Leyden Ranch. Because there was enough homes with only one point of ingress that that emergency access needed to be added. With that being said, that doesn't mean that it can't be used as egress as well. So it's all going to be obviously situationally dependent, but it can be used for ingress and egress.
So it all depends upon the situation at the time as to whether or not we're going to be able to use that access. And I did reach out to Leyden Ranch, and unfortunately, was able to make enough connection with them to be able to get into this. Did you as well? Let's see, I also want to make sure that the participants of the study are incorporating Arvada Fire's plans and Arvada PD into this study, their responses, and how this is all work together. Is that correct?
Yes.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
My name is Robert Joseph. I'm a new resident of Colorado. I've actually been in Leyden Rock for 9 months today. I have 2 questions. Number 1, in light of the poor cell reception, has there been any thought when you talk about sirens working in conjunction with the Colorado TV stations? Because I hear a siren go off and they've been notified, I can turn that TV station on and they're going to say your area is being evacuated. Number 2, are there any codes or rules governing the use of fire pits and charcoal barbecue grills in the backyards?
Thank you, yeah. So as Deputy Chief pointed out, we do have a couple of systems for notifications that we use. We are working with cellular companies as well to see what can be done related to any kind of communication. We will note that comment and then circle back to you about that. Do you want to speak to fire pits?
Yeah, so that's obviously always been a hot topic, especially, yeah, no pun intended there, right? And then especially in light of the Marshall Fire, that's always on the top of people's minds. The fire code does address how you can and cannot open burn. The challenge with an enforcement ability is everybody has a right to do what they want to do on their own property. So me coming in as a fire marshal, I can't necessarily come in and tell you you can't do this. It's a recommendation that if we're having a fire pit, that we keep it 15 feet away from any combustible. So that's gonna be your house, your fence, trees. It gets pretty hard in these tiny little backyards.
Yeah.
So I completely understand the concern. Obviously, if there's a recommendation that I have, if people want fire pits, use propane, because that's a lot more controllable and you can extinguish that a lot quicker. But unfortunately, the fire code does not restrict that. And same thing for grills.
Ironically, I live on windy streets.
Thank you. Is there another question over here?
Yeah, we heard from the fire department about evacuation. We heard from the police department and what their current plans are for evacuation of Leyden Rock.
And I'm going to let Commander Kellogg is with the police department, and he is the commander that is oversees the community of which you live and has very extensive knowledge.
So the great thing that my greatest concern is locking up 82nd Avenue. That is where the predominant number of our cars are going to be. And so the current plan, and actually let me preface this by saying a lot of this, and I think Steve's made the point that we have to have this evacuation plan based on where those fires are. So it may look a little different at the time to get you out of the neighborhoods. But predominantly right now, what we know for certain is that furthest west, Culebra and Ewell, we will have youth flow straight west. Everybody will go straight west. We'll open up 93, Highway 93, so we don't have to worry about it backing up. We've got Jefferson County Sheriff's Department's going to help us out with Highway 93, and then Orion and Leyden Rock Road will all go east. will block Indiana north-south, and we'll send everybody east as far east as, but the plan is to go all the way to Simmons. And so we'll just keep moving you east and moving you west out of that central area. And I'm sorry to keep talking with my hands and consequently the microphone goes elsewhere. So, so my apologies. But so that is the plan. The secondary priority for us is to make sure that we can get our fire partners in, and so we will make sure that so the westbound from Indiana is open, the eastbound from 93 is open. If something of that magnitude were to come through, I don't know, my assumption would be that you would call upon some assistance from your partners. But so we have that plan in place. We have identified some of the primary exit, exflow streets within. But again, that will potentially be dictated by where the fire is and how we need to most safely get you out of there. And just so you guys understand as well, we work very closely when something like this happens. Our command post is unified with fire. And so we look at them as the subject matter experts with regards to this, and we listen to them very closely. And so if they say, no, you can't do this, or you need to go over here, or I think about that fire last spring, was it August? That fire moved remarkably fast, and it was great subject matter expertise that they offered us in moving certain officers in certain directions so that we could block certain streets off. So I hope that answers your question. Do you have any, sir?
I realize this is putting you on the spot, but with your professional opinion, is that plan adequate?
Yes, sir. We will open it up. There won't be you're not going to be stopping at stop signs at 93 or at Indiana. We'll open it all up. We'll close Indiana down at 64th and at 92nd, so nobody's coming south and nobody's coming north. We're moving everybody away from the area. Now,
I guess my concern is our house backs up in the patched open space with that fire just going from that direction, just going to go right up to our back door. We can't go down to 82nd. Is there a current evacuation plan that would cover that scenario?
I don't want to give you any bad information. I would need to take a look at that off the top of my head. I fear giving you bad information. We did discuss, ironically, we discussed Patrick's Park earlier today about some of the challenges that exist there. And myself and my traffic lieutenant are looking at other options through there in case there was something that barricaded you away from being able to move out of that area. So,
Commander Kellogg.
Sir.
Chris Woodley and I met with Commander Mark Nazarek when, after the Marshall fire, we talked about their response.
Yes.
He was one of the primary commanding officers of Flatirons Fall. He told us that with as much love as he had for the PD up there, they weren't able to do that. Their officers were going door to door to get the word out, to get notification out. And we have recorded interviews with people where it took them 90 minutes to go a mile and a half. I completely respect the plan that you've laid out for us, and I'm very happy to hear that a lot of us think west. But Mark actually laid out for us that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Yeah.
As pointed out by Mike Tyson. So something to think about, and that's our concern for being able to care for ourselves. We trust our data PD. We need to be able to take care of ourselves. Question for you, and for the people that are preparing the survey. Have you reached out to the Leyden Metropolitan District, the board governments, to involve us in these conversations? We live here. We can tell you, all the people in this room can tell you where the issues are going to lie. We'll find the time, we'll spend the time with you. We just need the invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I appreciate the comments. I think February I attended a board meeting to help explain the process to the boards, and then from there we developed an agreement scope. So we're definitely trying to make sure that we bring all the moving pieces together, and we will be working together as we move forward. So I appreciate the collaboration there. I just wanted to do a quick time check. We are going to talk about next steps. Are there any final comments or open discussion before we close out? Chris?
I always like to end meetings with like this with a takeaway. And what I'm curious about, since we have police and we have fire here, we're all right now, I think, in the false sense of security. It looks like we live in Ireland right now. That's going to turn brown soon. Winds are going to come back up. Obviously, we appreciate the city's efforts, but as somebody made the point over here, this is going to be a while before some of these things are instituted. So what I wanted to ask you guys is, let's say we see that orange glow to our west. What's your advice? Maybe you can give us a couple of steps. Do we wait for a notification? Because one of the things as Brett mentioned, we interviewed folks that were involved in the Marshall Fire, and on at least three separate occasions, and these people were not speaking to each other, they separately said, we never got a notification, we didn't know when to leave, nobody said anything. And when they finally did evacuate, the firefighters were like, what are you doing here? Get out, why are you still here? So what's your advice? When do we go? And where do you turn for official information? Say we don't get the JeffCon notification. What's your advice on that? Before they answer that, also, I'm just curious, who in this room, by a show of hands, would be interested down the road in doing a drill? Community-wide drill. Okay, awesome. That's kind of what I figured.
So I'll speak real quickly. So I was a first responder at the Marshall Fire. I had worked at the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department at the time, and I was a part of one of the evacuation teams. I will tell you that don't wait. We were very surprised, and some of the gridlock that occurred was because the evacuations we were doing, really, a lot of them didn't make sense. We're 6 hours into the fire, we're actually knocking on doors of houses that are filled with smoke, telling people they need to leave. And so there was a lot of lessons that were learned from the Marshall Fire. One of them was that personal responsibility of getting your stuff and getting going. And I will tell you that one of the other issues to think about as you're planning, 20% of the homes that we evacuated had no transportation. It was either a nanny, it was a teenager, it was other variables. And so we were having to take deputies and officers off the roads and fill their cars full of people to just get them out of the area. So to your question, don't wait for the orange glow. When you got smoke, get your stuff and go. And allow us to secure that neighborhood and do our best to protect your belongings and your property, but don't risk waiting for anything else. Did you want to add to that all? Apparently I did perfect.
All right, on that note, maybe we can hit the next steps slide here. So as part of our study, we're going to be going through a process where we look at the technical data alongside the feedback that we've been getting from you here tonight, as well as the survey results. And just to let you know that we're basically at the stage of analyzing the information that we're receiving, both technical and non-technical together. That's really what we're doing here at this stage of the process. We do have other information in the background that we're processing as well. We are going to finalize the transportation analysis piece about this particular area. That's the Leyden subdivisions as well as the surrounding roadways. That's part of what we're going to be looking at as part of the analysis on the transportation infrastructure side. And then lastly, we plan to present the study results back to you. Again, we do have 3 meetings. This is the first one of 3. So we'll be coming back out, notifying you about the next meeting and the following meeting to be able to serve you with additional information about the analysis that we're doing. So with that, I just wanted to thank you all for coming out tonight. I really appreciate the information that you provided. And Chris?
You mentioned if people want to get in touch with you and conference, what's the clearinghouse?
Yes, and we do have information on the desks back there related to Speak Up Arvada. We have our link in that for our project there on Speak Up. You can get in touch with us through those meetings, and there are other information and go packs from the fire department. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you very much.